Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being the show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Supernatural, a great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, there's the whole situation with obviously like Sam and Dean are just kind of kicking in, in the bunker, and it's like, oh, the lights kind of keep going out, so it's like, all right, we've literally faced the devil, I've killed Hitler multiple times. It's like, we can fix the issues that are going on here. So they try to like just turn it off and then turn it back on, and lo and behold, a magical woman who ends up being a wood nymph named Mrs. Butters pops up, and it's like I couldn't think of what to compare her to until later on, because Dean refers to her as basically like an evil Mary Poppins. I'm like, yeah, definitely a Mary Poppins like here. But we find out like she's been a part of the Men of Letters situation for a long time now. She kind of, helped them out and stuff like that. Obviously, she's been stuck in standby mode forever because obviously like Abaddon had killed all of them. But obviously Miss Butters didn't know at the time because like they never came back, so she put herself in. So she thought it was still like 1958 when in actuality obviously it's 2020. And it's interesting too because we end up finding out that basically the entire time that Sam and Dean have been living here, they've been living in like standby power. This facility has always been at basically 50%, and then all of a sudden, I love that because my mind is like, that's so effed up and crazy to do that. It's literally, not only is it the final season, it's the final episodes of the final season, and you're like, oh yeah, there's more to this bunker that you've been living in for years, and you know nothing. Even after all this time, it's like, oh yeah, we haven't fully explored this bunker to know everything there is to know about. All right, it runs on wood nymph power, and we've been running at small capacity. There is literally a monster detecting map, and it's like, wait, what? We've had this the entire time? What? Dean's all about it. Sam has his reservations because it's like, how do we know we can trust her? And lo and behold, they go, and it's like, I feel so bad for those vampires because it's like you just bust into their place. It's like you don't know for sure that they've been. I mean, which is kind of effed up because you've come across good vampires and werewolves because there's Garth and his family, man. They're good, but it's like, granted, their situation's a little different because it's like, well, you know them, but you've come across vampires that haven't been complete other D-bags, and they were drinking blood bags. So, like, who's to say, so you kind of look at that situation like, oh, no, that's kind of messed up because they were just sitting there watching TV. He's like, why are vampires like that living in such like high, mansions and places, and we're vampires living kind of in the slums? And it's like, poor bastards immediately get their head chopped off, which Dean's like, holy shit, that was like record time. No having to like research or investigate. We just got to it. It's like, that has to be record time. And I love that. And so now, I also love before he left, he ended up telling Jack about Mrs. Butters. And you can see the look on Jack's face, because obviously Jack's still processing everything now, having a soul back, and just kind of dealing with everything that he's feeling. But the fact of the matter is, like, he's just hearing all of Dean bring up Mrs. Butters and stuff like that. It's like he's still stuck in his depression a little bit, but he's kind of perking up a little bit and almost look on his face like, wait, what? Some random lady, keep an eye on her. What? What is this all about? And like, lo and behold, they came back. She spruced the place up, made it like Christmas. But I thought it was interesting. The moment she saw Jack, she's like, what are you? It's like, I guess because of being a wood nymph, maybe it's kind of like a supernatural, like a powerful supernatural radar she has, where she can immediately go, okay, you're not human, you're something else. I mean, to be fair, he is part human. But nevertheless, I just thought that was interesting. But it's like, at first, it's like, oh, if Sam and Dean are okay with you, then I am too. And it's like making him a smoothie. And it's like, you can have this tomato drink, Dean, because your cholesterol's too high. He's almost looking like, that's messed up. And it's just like fun times. And I love that we're like hard cutting montages of them hunting. And at the same time, like there's holidays that go through Thanksgiving, 4th of July and stuff like that. I even love that literally at one point, you literally see Sam with Mjolnir. And I'm like, what does that even mean in the context of everything? Is that supposed to, like, there's some part of me that's like, it's a gag, but part of me's thinking too deep about it. I'm like, does he actually have Mjolnir because that was actually something he found in a bunker? Like, it was just like the most, like, I'm like, why? I guess maybe legally you could probably get away with that without it being too much. I mean, because you're not saying its name, so I guess it's okay. Because let's not forget, this is Warner Brothers, which DC's under the Warner Brother umbrella. So it's like, why not something? I mean, you would I mean, they've done other stuff too, so that's why I was almost wondering, like, why not show up with like a batarang or something? You know, maybe that would have cost money. I don't know. Because I'm not saying like come out with Captain America's shield, because I feel like that probably costs even more, because it's like, that's pretty specific. And so is Mjolnir too, but it's like, that was just so weird to me. I'm like, what is that bit? I don't get it. It's crazy. 'Cause I think it's just meant to be like I said, it's a gag that I'm overthinking. But nevertheless, despite everything, Jack and Miss Butters are spending more and more time together, and she's learning more about him. About the situation, about like, oh, so you're Lucifer's kid. It's like, yep. Well, I didn't really know my dad. The only family I've had was Sam and Dean and Mary, and it's like, that was her mom, and he kind of explains everything. To be fair, at the time, he didn't have his soul. Does it justify it? No, but it's also like, once again, I think that's why Sam is the one. I mean, because to be fair, Sam has always had a like better relationship with Jack than Dean has. Like from the beginning, Dean was kind of like, we need to kill this kid. But over the course of things, he ended up warming up to him. But Sam has always been the one that was always kind of willing to give Jack a chance. Always kind of believed in Jack. But I think it's also from the perspective of Sam knows what it's literally like to not have a soul. Like he's like, I did shit back in season 6 because I didn't have a soul. So he's like, I'm not gonna. Yes, it sucks. He killed our mom, and it's like that's not something that is easy to get over. But I think he's willing. He's been more willing, and I mean, to be fair, Sam and Dean are a lot better. Like Sam is a lot better at putting. He's always had his heart on his sleeves. Dean always kind of buries his emotions. They even had a conversation earlier, and it's like, yeah, Jack, yeah, he's a mess. Because it's like, look at me, I'm a perfect example of health, and Sam is like, ignoring your trauma is not healthy, and he's like, sure it is, which that is kind of fucked up. Like that's some deep level stuff right there. Just that line in itself. He's like, of course it's healthy to completely ignore your trauma. It's like he was half joking, but at the same time, it's like that is how Dean handles things. Also, I love them like packed lunches she gives them and everything, sending them off like, have a great day at school, or have a great day hunting monsters, kids. So I just thought that was just kind of interesting. But then it just seems like, obviously it seems like she probably is hiding something, because Jack comes across her, and it's like, he finds her file, and it's like, so it's like, because she said she wasn't part of the Man of Letters, but I was like, was she technically? But it's like, no, she was a subject, and so obviously he wants to talk to Sam and Dean. Well, Sam was getting prepared for his date with Eileen, and you have Dean just kind of winking and nodding about basically wishing his brother the best of luck getting laid. And it's like, you should treat your brother better. And he's like, why? But nevertheless, like, Jack ends up being taken down by Miss Butters, because she's like, because so from the very beginning, she already planned to do this the moment she found out about who Jack really was. When she got a hint of his situation, because Jack ended up finding out, like, she's this way because home dude from the Men of Letters pushed her in this situation. Normally, wood nymphs are docile until you threaten their family, and the people they care about. Then they can go a little, obviously, like in her case, a little homicidal, to the point like home dude had his head ripped off by her, and she's like, all right, anyone ready for tea? And I was like, that's super dark. But for her, she looks at him, it's like, you're the child of Lucifer. The fact of the matter is you're as powerful as you are. It's like, the reason why they have you down here is like, they look at you and they're scared of you. Which, to be fair, is sadly nothing new. Like, Sam and Dean were kind of afraid of Jack from the beginning, but it's like, after everything we've been through, you're still scared of me. It's like, you were literally juicing yourself up to go toe-to-toe with God. And maybe they had this conversation beforehand. I try to remember. It's been months, so do forgive me. Because they bring it up in the episode, it's like, it's not just God, it's not just Chuck they're going after, they're going to have to go after Amara too. It's like, I wonder, I guess it's like just to kind of, I mean, that's also the thing too, like, Billy just kind of okay with, so there must not be a thing of immediately, like, there won't be like, time, space continuum unraveling, the universe unraveling because you killed God and Amara, who are literally, the balance to everything. So it's like, it is kind of sunken because Amara wants nothing to do with it, but I guess they think like maybe if they kill Chuck, like Amara might have issues with her brother, but it's like, she did want him dead at one point in time, and it's like, yeah, he's kind of a dick, but it's like, that's still her brother, so is she going to be okay with her nephew being the one that ended up snuffing him out? No, because it's not her nephew, it's her, grandnephew is. I think that's how that would be on a family tree. I don't. That gets into tricky parts of what you label that as. Regardless, like would she be okay with Jack being the one to do it? But obviously everything Miss Butters is saying to him is just, because obviously with everything that he's done, he already feels guilty enough. And her just saying all the stuff that he already feels himself, that now he's worried, like, maybe Sam and Dean do look at me like a monster. Maybe I am a monster, And so I love when Dean finds out. She's like, yeah, God, it's like, oh, yeah, Sam and Dean. She's like, Dean, come on, we got to work together to kill, Jack. And he was like, wait, excuse me? And she's like, yeah, we gotta kill Jack, he's a monster. And he's like, oh, it was so good. He was like, it was so good until you went Nurse Ratched on us. I love that. He was trying to be calm and everything. It's just kind of like, it's like, okay, how about we do this? How about he's just kind of looking at the sandwich. He's like, no, I don't want to jeopardize what we have. All right, how about we do this? I don't want to kill you, so how about we do this? We just let Jack go and we pretend like none of this happened. I love that. So it's like, you're infected, get in there. And then like she's bringing it up to, it's like, I got good news and bad news. It's like, okay, so now, Jack is taking over Dean's mind, so we have to kill them both. And he's like, okay, yeah, sure. Let me go get my gun so we can do. He's like, thank you. She's like, yeah. So, but obviously Jack and Dean do kind of have a heart-to-heart about the whole situation, because he's like, do you look at me like a monster? And he's like, yes, I'm trying my best, it's not going to be easy. It's impossible to forget what happened, what you did. But he's like, I am trying, so. But the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, he's like, some evil Mary Poppins isn't going to be the one that ended up taking you out. So kind of in his own way, because obviously he's always, like I said earlier, he eventually grew to care about Jack, and it's just like, it's still there. It's just obviously it's like I said, I think Sam is taking it a little better. Like Sam, I think, like I said, has just handled like the whole situation a little bit better than Dean did. Also because it's like, you can also look at it on like a deeper level, because like, well, let's not forget, Dean was 4 when their mom died, and Sam, like, it's a whole complicated thing because Dean had memories with her. I think, I'm not saying in no shape or form did Sam love his mom any less. It was like he didn't really know her. And that doesn't take away anything, but it is a thing of like, it adds even more to what it's like losing her, that hits even harder. But regardless, when it's all said and done, though, I love Dean's trying to cut the chains, but all it does is send Jack flying. And Dean's got, I got an idea. Jack's like, yeah. And Dean didn't say anything because I thought he was almost going to, I thought he was going to say, oh, but you're not going to like this plan. He's like, all right, it's just, pain is just the body's way of just kind of letting it go. So, okay, on the count of 3, 1, bam, goes to the door. It's like, okay, good. I love that. But they try to take down Miss Butters, but it doesn't work. I thought it was kind of sinister when like everything was kind of shutting down and her eyes are glowing green, and she's like, I've had enough, and she's planning on killing Jack. She's like, I'm not going to let my family be taken again. But it's like, no, like, you hurt him is hurting us because he is like family to us. But also it's like, you want to, this whole thing is about saving the world, right? Well, Jack is going to save the world, so if you kill him, you're going to take away our way of saving the world. And obviously for her, she feels so conflicted because obviously she was told like, oh, I need to kill monsters, it's the only way I'm going to be able to go home. But it's like, you weren't, like, he wasn't the guy who did, like, wasn't a good guy. He tortured you and did all this to you because he made you go against your nature. Like, he turned you into a weapon. He basically turned you into a guard dog to a certain extent. But luckily, they were able to kind of stop her, and she kind of apologizes. Side note, it was also super sad when she's up there ripping out Sam's fingernails, and it's like, ugh. But nevertheless, she ends up recovering his fingernails, and it's like, no, it's all good. So it's like, oh, she's planning on going back to the woods because they made the decision. Like, that's what it's like, you wanted to go home, right? That's what this was always about. Like, you were never kind of brought into this because you wanted to be. You're kind of forced into it. But it's like, what do you want? She's like, she wants to, be able to go back to the woods to check up on things and everything. So it's nice. It's a whole conversation about, like, with her going, though, it's going to go back to being on standby. And when it's all said and done, though, it's like, yeah, he's like, oh, we'll have to do without the monster map. Things were too easy anyway. Plus, we don't even know what that telescope does. It's like, oh, basically that telescope lets you look into multiple dimensions. It's like, he's like, and then Dean's like, what? I didn't see anything. She's like, oh, that's not good. He's like, oh, so Chuck has officially destroyed he's literally destroyed the multiverse. This is the only world left. interesting. And once again, just that side note of so much shit that we still didn't know. That's only 2 things that we knew got fully affected by like her kicking in into overdrive. It's like, what else actually popped up that we didn't get to know about? It's just like, once again, I like that because it's like, oh, it comes and goes. It's like, oh yeah, we introduced this thing in the final scene. Why would you wait to the final scene? Don't worry about it. We let you know that it's here in the bunker, but the fact of the matter is it's no longer accessible. So it's just interesting. But obviously, you know, Miss Butters leaves telling Dean, hey, eat your vegetables. Sam, cut your hair. Jack, save the world. I'm like, that's pretty dope. But also, it's the whole thing of obviously, you know, Jack, it's like wondering whether or not he can do this. And it's like, you know, and Sam saying you can do it. You're the only one who can, you know? Because I think for him, it's just kind of... Because there was also, like, some stuff because they're like, oh, they feel like... It's like, because Sam was like, yeah, it feels like Jack's hiding something. Once again, it's been months, so I ended up forgetting, like, what he learned in the garden. Besides getting his soul back and everything, like, what else happened there? You know? Who knows? If there was something else significant, it probably is. Like I said, my memory's terrible. But I do appreciate them kind of, you know, celebrating Jack's birthday. Now, it's like, oh, like, you know, make a wish, and he does. And I'm like, that's significant in some shape or form. Like, it might come back later on, like, oh, this is what my wish was. Maybe not. I don't know. It is kind of interesting to think about that the entire time. They've never... I mean, to be fair, Sam even said at the beginning, like, we're not much of a holiday people just because, you know, work and everything. Except for, like, you know, the specials and stuff like that might come up. That's the only time, like, holiday stuff will kind of come up. But it's like, celebrating stuff doesn't really happen. So it's like, you know... I even love her making that joke about, like, oh, he's like... Because Dean's like, where's my cake? She's like, oh, you want to... I thought someone your age wouldn't want to know about how old they are. And everyone else is laughing, and Dean just looks so pissed about it. But nevertheless, it was, in general, this was obviously... nothing too bad went down. Luckily, it was, it's one of those episodes where everything kind of works out. And it's like, oh, it was kind of, you know, just a fun episode. I even love that thing where Dean was kind of like, oh, because Sam's like, why didn't you call me? He's like, honestly, I thought you getting laid was more important. He's like, didn't saving you guys? He's like, kind of like, yeah, it's been a really long time for you, Sam. But nevertheless, aside from everything, I am very excited to have Supernatural back. Obviously, this was episode 14. We're clicking down. We've only got 6 episodes left now, so... I am curious to, you know, see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode, into these next few episodes, to see how the whole thing ends up wrapping up. But, you know, that's me getting too ahead of myself. Let's just start with, let's see where things take us in the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.